great day. Anyways, as much as I could talk about Love Island and rave culture all day, we're going to get into it because my pop culture pick of the week is a good one. And I think it's going to lead us somewhere that really matters. So guys, my pop culture pick of the week, I feel like we've come full circle from my solo episode, which was all about heated rivalry. And this week it is Off Campus. And I don't think you really can compare the two because Off Campus is like CW college drama, but more elevated. And Heated Rivalry really felt like art to me. It was, the way it was shot, the cinematography, it was giving much more HBO vibes. The acting, chef's kiss. So I will not be comparing them today, but I will be talking about Off Campus because if you want to hear me talk about Heated Rivalry, go back to season 2, episode 1. This season we're in episode 1. Off Campus, however, is romantic story set against the backdrop of a hockey team. And that's about where all the similarities lie. But I feel like the audience is definitely the same for both, probably. For those that don't know Off Campus, a quick summary. Girl meets boy. Girl is super smart, music major, and she has a crush on the hot band boy. But girl is too nervous to talk to hot band boy. Enter the star hockey boy, who approaches our girl, asking her to help him study to pass his exam. But our girl's not interested in this hockey boy because she likes the hot band boy. Hockey boy realizes that she has a crush on hot band boy, and he suggests, how about I help you get hot band boy if you help me pass this exam? And of course, along the way, the hockey boy and our music girl fall madly in love. It's a tale we all know very well. But the reason this show is so fucking good is really, this is just the beginning of it. The show explores love and the complexities of adulthood through these relationships that the main characters have with one another. And it's not just romantic relationships. So much of Off Campus is about the friendships. So what's interesting is Off Campus is actually based on a book series that's composed of 5 novels. It follows these romances or friendships of this tight-knit friendship group. And each book centers on a different hockey player and a different female love interests. And the first season, we focused on Hannah and Garrett. And we started to touch on Allie and Dean, and they're going to be the stars for season 2. But beyond this show just being so goddamn hot, they're all so hot. It's kind of crazy. Like, all of them, all the guys, all the girls. I'm like, who casted this? Because these people are gorgeous. But the script is just incredibly well done. And I read this really cool take on social that I think really encapsulated why I really felt like this show was so important. And I think it points to like a broader cultural shift that's really been happening ever since the Me Too movement. So what I want to go into is this take was from Lindsay Fleming, and she's a psychotherapist, and she highlighted 8 things Off Campus did that most shows completely miss. I went and picked my top 4. Again, I'll link in the show notes her full summary so you can go and take a look. But these are some of my favorites. So, number 1, it proved chemistry doesn't require toxicity. The relationships were passionate, intense, and entertaining without constantly humiliating or emotionally destroying each other. People are craving love stories where emotional safety still feels exciting. My take here, I really loved that with this show there was yearning, but you also just saw the characters actually getting together and being happy. There were problems that they worked through, but I liked that it wasn't seasons upon seasons of issues where all you're doing is waiting for the couple to kind of sort out their issues. It felt much more realistic. When you like someone, you usually end up dating them. There's not all this drama that ensues for years of your life. And, as the psychotherapist Lindsay said, the relationships were safe. And this was something I've spoken about before, because I think traditionally pop culture has really leaned on Jay Shetty's framework that I always use in this show, which is the firework relationship, where it's hot and heavy. And a lot of the time, there's just attachment issues at play. And pop culture doesn't really cover the relationships that are calm and safe. And they can still be passionate, intense, and entertaining. And that's what this show is showing us, is that you don't always need to portray the firework relationship for a show to be successful. You can also show something that's real and safe and comfortable, and it's still intense and passionate. And it was incredibly well done. Number 2, it didn't villainize other women. So the popular girls weren't automatically evil or insecure caricatures. Viewers are tired of female characters only existing to compete with each other. I know most millennial women can relate to this, that so many of the movies we grew up seeing, this was exactly what happened, is the women were villainized, and it was always women competing with each other for men. So what was great in Off Campus is these quote unquote popular girls, they called them the puck bunnies, which I think is so funny. And when Hannah, our main girl, starts dating Garrett, the hockey player, she starts going to his hockey games and sitting with the puck bunnies. And you're kind of waiting and expecting that these popular girls will be mean girls, and they're going to be mean to her, and it's going to follow that classic trope of the popular mean girls. But it never happens. The girls are super welcoming, and they start to build friendships, and that mean girl mentality never arises. And I think it's just so fucking important, because there's this stupid fucking concept that's always driven me mental about this idea that girls are mean. And I think it's such bullshit. And I often really struggle with women who say, I struggle to make female friends because girls are mean and I prefer to hang out with men. And whenever I hear people say that, I often think that might be a sign that you need to look at something within yourself. Because this idea that women are mean and they're your enemy is just blatantly untrue. Ultimately, anyone in the world can be mean, no matter what gender you are. Like, mean people is not a gender specific thing. So this idea of making it always seem like women are these like mean girls, that it's like, oh, it's so hard to be friends with girls. It's just like playing into that stupid trope that we've been fed in pop culture. And then building on that, I think this idea of women competing. So what also is interesting is this never came up in the show. So again, when Hannah started dating Garrett, you had learned early on in the show that Garrett had been casually sleeping with one of the puck bunnies, and her name was Kendall. Garrett wasn't great with her. He didn't really treat her very well. He kind of treated her like a late night booty call, and she definitely had feelings for him. I think he knew that, and he never really respected that. And halfway through the show, there's a scene with Garrett and Kendall where he actually apologizes to her. And she ultimately says how happy she is for him that he's with Hannah. And it just felt so wholesome. And it was just so great to see a man recognize his mistake, apologize for it, but then also for both of them to walk away as friends, and the other woman not to be like jealous of the girlfriend that he's with, but rather just happy for both of them. There was no fighting over this guy, which again, you kind of were waiting for. I remember watching that episode being like, ugh, they're going to probably fight over him. It's going to be a whole thing. It never happened though. Was so fucking refreshing. I loved it. And I think by not... Oh, something's beeping in my apartment. Oh, it's my slow cooker. 1 second, guys. Oh, wait, no. It's just going to go off. It'll just be, ooh, that's right. Slow cookers turn off themselves. Ugh, that was a big pivot. I'm making slow cooked rhubarb and apple. Isn't that cute? I went to the markets today and got all these vegetables. It's my little trad wife side of me. Ugh, no, ew, not trad wife. Blah, yuck. That's just me being wholesome. Better. I hate trad wife. Get back to what I was saying. By not villainizing women or men in the show, it equally became about friendships of both the men and women as well. So it was women supporting women, men supporting men. There was a lot of vulnerability in the friendships for the men as well, which again, I think is really important, especially for the male friendships, for men to see generally, because we all know men struggle with being vulnerable, and showing more friendships where men can really speak to each other about their feelings and support each other through their trauma. It's incredibly impactful. And I feel like that was able to exist because they didn't villainize people in this. Point number 3, the trauma felt human. Characters weren't magically healed after one emotional conversation. Trauma showed up through avoidance, anger, attachment issues, perfectionism, and self-worth struggles, the way it actually does in real life. So before I continue into this section, I do want to note that I have a brief discussion of rape that is depicted in the show off campus. So if these themes are difficult for you, please feel free to skip ahead about 7 minutes. And this is a theme that I will come back to later in the episode, so I'm going to flag it again. And if you or someone you know needs support, I'm going to leave some resources in the show notes. So just to flag a little PSA here. Now, this topic around the trauma felt human is huge and one of the most important reasons why I liked this show. There are a few different traumas that are at play in the show, but I'm going to focus on Hannah. So for Hannah, we find out that she was roofied and raped in high school at a party. She reported the rape and it did go to court, but it ultimately was dismissed by the judge due to quote unquote lack of evidence. We find out that her rapist was one of the star hockey players at her school. And I think she had said something like he was the mayor's son, so he was a big deal in town. And essentially everyone turned against her and said that she was lying and that the guys who were his friends all lied to protect him. So she had this awful, awful experience. And it resulted in a lot of her and her family being totally dismissed by their community. And she holds a lot of guilt for that. You find out she also feels that has a lot of guilt towards the financial burden that it put on her family for the lawyer fees and the therapy that she needed afterwards. But there were 3 scenes that really stood out to me when the show was covering this topic. The first was when Hannah decides to share with Garrett that she was raped. So at this point, when she shares this, they're not even dating. Things are progressing. You can kind of see they like each other, but she's starting to kind of get somewhere with the hot band guy that she's had a crush on. So she's really focused on that. And she's thinking that it seems like they're likely going to have sex, her and the hot band guy. And he's like invited her over to his I guess, college dorm or whatever. So she's getting really anxious because she hasn't really been physical since the rape. So she decides to speak to Garrett and say, can we have sex so I'm prepared? So she sits him down and says, I need to tell you something, but I don't want you to make a big deal about it. I'm fine. I've worked through it. I just need your help. So it's this very vulnerable scene where she's able to share with him that she was raped and he holds space for that. And they decide that they're going to try and have sex later that day. It's so funny when you say the rationale of them having sex to make her feel safer. But, ultimately later that day when she goes back to Garrett's, she's still too traumatized to have sex. So Garrett actually suggests that they masturbate together. And he's so kind to her and he creates such a safe environment. And I think the way that the rape was discussed in this moment was just so important. And seeing what Garrett was doing in terms of making her feel safe, he was checking in on her and saying that she was in a safe environment and easing her into it. It was just the most perfect way that a man can react to a woman who has gone through that. And again, I have to think that there likely was some type of trauma therapist who advised maybe on some of these script decisions, or maybe the author has had experiences in this herself, because all the ways that he was reacting were so on point to how you should respond to someone who has been raped. So it was incredibly well written. Now, the second scene that was very heartbreaking was later in the series when Hannah calls her mom. Heartbreaking in a good way. So she starts to open up, Hannah, about how guilty she feels for getting raped. And she breaks down telling her mom that she feels like everything is her fault and she's ruined her family's lives. And her mother kind of listens to her and she just handles it with such kindness and space for Hannah's emotions. And I think it was a really great scene for any parent to see who might have had a child that's gone through something like this. And when Hannah's kind of just spitting it all out around the guilt she feels, ruining their lives, her mother pauses and she says to her, "What did you do wrong?" And Hannah kind of takes a moment and she's like, "What?" And her mother then follows by saying, "Well, if you're feeling guilty, then it must mean that you did something wrong. So what is it exactly?" And Hannah pauses, uncertain. She kind of goes, I should have, and her mother interrupts her and says, "You went to a party, sweet pea. You were a high school kid who had a drink. That's all. You didn't do anything wrong, Hannah. That night and everything that happened after, that is not on you. There is nothing that you could have or should have done. And as far as ruining our lives, I am fine, and so is your dad. Wow. That scene. Her mother, just like the way the dynamic shifted on the what did you do wrong? And it really, I remember kind of sitting there being like, where's this going? And then when she kind of said, well, if you're feeling guilty, then it must mean you've done something wrong. You were like, it really flipped the whole narrative. And I think it was able to really help Hannah out of this narrative she was telling herself to stand back and be like, oh, like I didn't do anything wrong. She's the victim here. I just felt like that scene really said it all. And what an important scene for the parent-child dynamic. And finally, the last scene, we see Hannah opening up to her best friend Allie about her rape. Again, she holds so much guilt. She feels scared to tell her friend that she might look at her differently, treat her differently, or hate her for not telling her sooner, just like what happened in high school. And again, she is met with such kindness. The girls sit together hands in hand, and Allie says to her that she already knew, and she was just waiting for Hannah to feel comfortable to tell her. I felt it was important to call out these three scenes because there was the reactions from her love interest, her mother, and her best friend, spread throughout the show. It showed her slowly healing, but it wasn't one conversation because trauma lives with you. It's not healed by one conversation, and so often shows portray it that way. This is something that Hannah will always carry with her, but it will get lighter the more she talks about it and shares with her trusted people. And you start to see that throughout the season. The trauma gets lighter. It's met with kindness, acceptance, and love. And then you can really start to see her healing. You even see the way she talks about it just starts to like lessen in the emotional response. And I think for a show that has likely a very young audience, this was incredibly powerful to portray for them. And honestly, it wasn't just Hannah going through something. And I had said that I wanted to focus on Hannah, but all of the characters were figuring out young adulthood. They were learning themselves sexually, trying to figure out what they like, what they want to do in their life, the type of person they want to be, their relationships with their family dynamics. They were all uncovering different traumas and learning their emotional communication. So you just saw these young people discovering all of that in a really authentic way and sharing with each other and leaning on each other. It was just real pain, and it wasn't manufactured drama, which is so often what shows like this love to do, is they create drama out of nothing instead of leaning on storytelling of real things that happen to people and letting emotions guide the way for the drama. Now, my last point here. Number 4, it normalized conversations about women's pleasure. The male characters openly caring about women's pleasure challenged the idea that emotional attentiveness makes men less masculine and instead made it attractive. So remember the hockey player line that I mentioned at the top of the show? Well, there's this incredible scene where Garrett confides in Dean. He's worried about a girl he's going to sleep with, which is Hannah, and he wants to make sure she orgasms. And Dean tells him, and I quote, "There's one thing that helps make a girl come. The single, most effective, highly recommended, and enjoyed by all tool at your disposal. Trust." That's it. She's got to feel completely safe, completely relaxed. But consent is key. If she can't consent, she doesn't feel safe. I mean, this says it all to me. The hottest, most masculine thing is to be emotional and to feel like you can open up and to be vulnerable and to cry. That is so fucking hot to me. And I think that is the sign of a truly masculine, evolved male. And all these guys were like that. They're all so hot. Oh my God, I can't. And this scene just, I think, really represents a movement that I've been following for many years, which is called Teaches Consent. And I'm going to be talking more about this later in the episode. But seeing the usage of consent language moving more into mainstream media is so incredibly exciting and well overdue. And on top of that, men actually understanding that sexually women need emotional safety to fully enjoy sex. Or at least that's my experience, but I'm sure a lot of women feel that way. And I just think that's incredibly true. And just like, what a hot scene, being like, trust and consent are the tools to make her come. Hell yeah. Dude, he's like brilliant. I'm obsessed. I am obsessed. Whoever wrote that is a genius. I love it. We need all of that. Every man needs to see that scene etched into their brain and approach women like that. Honestly, we should add it into our sexual education. That just that scene. That's all they need to watch. Nothing else. Just get the men to watch that or the boys to watch that and they'll be fine. Anyways, I mean, this show is absolutely wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved the way it covered these really deep themes in such authentic and real and raw ways. But it's still like a fun college, like drama show as well. So it's very entertaining. Please go watch it. I'm so excited for season 2 where it follows Allie and Dean because I think they are so hot. Love them. But yeah, that's my pop